And we talked about how nobody wants to die. And when you're dying, you want to live forever, right? So when you're young, longevity is something that's a bit different. But we have Brian Johnson, and he's coming to Singapore in 2 weeks' time. Biohackers, it will send a video out. And he has a good slogan called "Don't Die." I met a guy, very interesting guy. But nobody wants to die.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave.
The recap here that we have here is that at the end of the day, startups are really about focusing and solving for people's number one problem. And so the who, the when, the why is really key. Because you're solving someone's number 2 or number 3 problem, people don't care, right? Because I got to solve my number 1 problem now. If you have been holding your piss for an hour and you really need to go to the toilet, that's your number 1 problem. I come up to you and say, hey, do you want a SaaS software that makes you learn faster? You'll be like, no, I need to go to the toilet now. So people are very problem oriented. And so making sure that you know who the person is, when they are, why they have that problem is very key. So when my CEO was basically yesterday was like, I have this problem at this point of time, then I was like, okay, I will solve that problem for you. But in my head, I was like, if a startup was there at that point of time and could hear him say that problem, they could have made $10,000 transaction immediately at that point. Now, if that startup talked to him today, they're not going to get paid. But if they were there present with him, listening to him, maybe through Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is, then that problem would have been solved and the money would have been made. So the who, the when it happens, and why is really key. And we talked about how nobody wants to die. And when you're dying, you want to live forever, right? So when you're young, longevity is something that's a bit different. But we have Brian Johnson, and he's coming to Singapore in 2 weeks' time. Biohackers, it will send a video out. And he has a good slogan called "Don't Die." I met a guy, very interesting guy. But nobody wants to die, right? I think he has a very good marketing slogan, and he's got a good group of people that he has hustling hard for it. And so we talked last week about 10x better. We talked about Spotify, Tesla. We talked about faster, which is in terms of convenience or perceived inconvenience. And we talk about cheaper, right? Which is about price, right? So again, for example, the reason why marketers are getting horribly outcompeted by AI right now is that 2 years ago, marketers would have to be like, let's sit down and create a marketing slogan, which all of you did last week. But all of you within 20 minutes were able to use ChatGPT, generate that out. So the speed of that was so much faster. Now, was the quality of your ad really better than what our humans could have done? Not really, I don't think so, right? I think we saw the quality was very authentic and handmade into a 20-minute time frame. But I'm just saying that a group of writers sitting down together would have taken 10 times longer to come up, because you guys took about 10, 15 minutes. So 10 times more will be 150 minutes, would be about 3 hours. So you can imagine, I'm just trying to say here is like the slogans, the quips, the alliteration, the rhymes, whatever you had, it would have taken more time. So ChatGPT as a marketer is 10 times faster than a human marketer. And of course, one interesting part about this is also cheaper as a result, because when you're replacing a human, it's not only about time and speed, but also because man hours, historically, 1 hour of effort of my work was done. And a lot of us historically have left manufacturing jobs in Singapore. We've given those manufacturing jobs to other countries in Southeast Asia like Vietnam, Johor, Indonesia, because we said that robots have replaced blue-collar workers. Last time in the past, when you did an hour of machinery work, you got paid 1 hour, right? And then now with automation in those countries, because 10x faster, but you don't get paid more. So we gave those jobs away. But guess what? You're now in services. You're now in finance. But the thing is this, if you're an accountant, you're a finance, you're a banker, a DBS, you're doing compliance and paperwork checking. Now, AI can take that job away. So the same forces that disrupted manufacturing and blue collar made blue collar an unattractive job. The jobs that your parents did and tell you now, please don't join blue collar, please don't be an engineer. That same disruption is now happening to the career professions that many of you are thinking are happening today. So it's really important for you to be thoughtful about these products, whether they're 10x better, 10x faster, 10x cheaper. And we talked about this and I shared this, but not everyone made a chance to see it. But again, when we look at 2 companies that are very similar, SpaceX and Starlink, some of you may have heard it, it's Elon Musk. He's the Steve Jobs of our current generation. But on the left-hand side, what we see here is the rockets that have happened from 1960 to 2030, right? And if you look on the y-axis, basically there is that you see here that was the price of setting up 1 kilogram. So 1 kilogram of material, metal or plastic, whatever it is. And the cost of that used to cost around $50,000, right? The rockets was $25,000. Space shuttle was trying to be reusable, but it came $50,000 because of so many errors, and they all blew up in the air as well. And then basically what you see, this little cluster on the right, is that again, we talk about how the rockets became reusable, right? And so these rockets effectively became cheaper. So the cost of it today has gone from 50,000, 25,000, 50,000 to the Falcon 1, which was about 12,000. And now SpaceX is about $800. And now ship, the estimate is about $200 per kilogram, right? So that is a 10x cheaper product. The rockets are 10 times cheaper to operate, run, maintain, push out payloads. And then he said to himself, you know what? I want to set up some satellites myself. And so they created Starlink. And Starlink, if you think about it, are just satellites in space that provide cellular service. But the thing is, we all know now is that they provide broadband level type of cell service anywhere in the world. Bali, Indonesia, Ukraine, any desert, wherever you are, you get it. And which is obviously it's expensive. It's about the same price as a cellular telco plan that we have here. But it's 100% reliable because it's anywhere in the world you can get it. So it's a 10x better product because from your perspective as a hiker, from your perspective as a remote worker, why am I in Bali dealing with the local telco service that's very intermittent, that is subject to typhoons and so forth, when I can just get a Starlink dish and get always on internet coverage, right? And I think this is an interesting dimension where the same company has created two different products. They use one product, which is a 10x cheaper product, and then they were able to set up these satellites that were much cheaper, and as a result, much easier to make profitable, into the Starlink, which is 10x better coverage for that customer. I think this is a good contrast of same founder, same company, two different products, but two very different value propositions. And it is valuable because all of you will be doing group work today. You guys will be selecting startups to review and analyze, and you'll be taking on the perspective of that founder to decide whether you are a 10x better product or in whatever form or fashion it is. And so we talk about unfair advantages: first mover, fast follower, network effects, economies of scale, IP and patents, regulatory and team. And lots of folks make very good questions. Can IP and patents slow down people? The answer is you can't duplicate some user patents on an app anymore because of the patents that's there. There are many ways to do it. You can invest in them, you can buy them out, you can outcompete them, you can just copy them. So there are many ways to do that. One example they had is that the USB thumb drive, right? So what most people don't know is that the USB thumb drive was invented in Singapore. And this guy, imagine, he is about our parents' generation. And basically, at that time, Singapore was the blue-collar manufacturing zone for all these consumer electronics, similar to how Vietnam or China or Shenzhen would look at it today. And so at that point of time, he was being asked to make these CD players, right? Digital CD players for the Japanese. And so they were like the CD, so because they were popular, right? These digital music players. And so his idea was like, you know what? I think it would be way more interesting if we removed the products, solutions. We don't need the ability to play music. We don't need the ability to play sound. I just want to have the ability, I just want to keep the hard drive, but make it easier to stick into laptops, right? The thumb drives that we all saw. And so he created that, and he filed a patent for it, and then nobody respected it. So his ex-employees, two of them were Chinese. They were in China. They went back to China, and then they just built another company on top of it. And then his product was granted patents in the US and in Singapore. And then the Chinese company got the patents approved for China. And that company became a billion-dollar company, and now it's not doing so well, but they make a lot of money off the patents, the licensing fees of all the Shenzhen manufacturers. This guy received some money from the manufacturing licenses, especially from the Western-oriented or Japanese-oriented manufacturers. But because his patent was not respected in China as a result, he did not capture most of the outcomes. So TREK is that first Singapore has pioneered this USB thumb drive, and currently he's in jail. His company wasn't doing well as his licensing royalties went down. He unfortunately chose to put together fraudulent accounting statements to hide that drop in revenue over time, and now he's in jail. Interesting story. Founder, entrepreneur, pioneer, David, trying to become Goliath, but got outcompeted because the patents were not respected, and now he's in jail. So, but who knows? When he comes out of jail, he might come up with another idea. He actually has come up with multiple ideas over time. He has created a wireless thumb drive which is used in many cameras today for your wireless syncing. He's a kind of a founder and pioneer and inventor persona. So this is something for you to be thoughtful about, that the unfair advantage, a lot of it has to do with this competition. And so we talk about how network effects are really important, which is that the more people who use it, the better it is, right? So we gave the example of memes. The more people who consume the meme, then the more fun the meme is, right? So the network effects of that are there. That's why you say memes are viral, right? We also talked about other stuff that are also viral, but we also talked about how network effects as a result help you outcompete your competition over time. As a result, when you think about network effects, everybody's going to walk around saying, I have network effects, I have network effects. Everyone says I have network effects. Does that make sense? But you have to be very thoughtful about the type of those network effects. And this realization that Uber has sub-city level network effects, and even within cities, sub-neighborhood effects, was not understood until maybe about 3 years ago in terms of knowledge. And even today, it's still not commonly understood by most founders today. It's not common knowledge. Today, all of us, you sit down together and we say, startups, unicorn, that's common knowledge because that knowledge started coming into existence about 10 years ago, right? So this now is a lexicon where we all know what it means. But network effects is still in that middle stage where most people don't really understand it. They know what the word means, but they don't really know how to apply it. And so I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of money left on the table for you, that if you are able to think through those network effects carefully from a first principles basis, there's money for you as a financier, as a founder, as a thinker. We have a certain philosophy called Kaizen. So maybe you've heard it. It's called, in Chinese, the Chinese characters would be Kaishan. But basically what it is that it is the process of which manufacturing became more lean. And so historically, when people made cars and those devices, they were looking at it and doing it in terms of every corner of the workshop, everybody worked on that piece. But of course, over time, they created the assembly line, which is what Henry Ford did, where people will do one thing at a time. So when a car goes by, I'll add the doorknobs. As the car goes by, I add a wheel. So there's a manufacturing line. And the Japanese improved on it, where they're saying that at any point of time, we can iterate and improve. At any point of the manufacturing step, we will try to improve that step. We don't pretend that's perfect. We will improve on it. So if you notice that there's an error that's coming down the line, you can pull on a line that rings a bell and the whole assembly line will stop. So imagine thousands of cars are on the line, tens of thousands of people on the line. You pull the thing, everybody stops. Why? Because what the Japanese realized was that if the junior worker sees the error but lets it go, then what happens is that error happens for tens of thousands of cars, and it's going to be way more expensive recalling those cars to come back. And so it's better to have a junior person pull that line and raise the alarm and stop work and fix the problem immediately, a small thing or whatever it is, and then go from there. And we saw that practice at Boeing, where we now have planes that have structural maintenance faults, right? So people knew about these issues. They knew that they didn't pass quality control. They knew that they were sloppy in sealing the thing. And then guess what? You're hanging out on your phone, chit-chatting, and suddenly the exit door blows open. That it wasn't supposed to be an exit door. It used to be a space for exit door. They put a seal over it. There was no quality control. And suddenly you're hanging on for dear life while somebody's holding you. And then you go viral because you don't have a shirt. You're shirtless. You're a teenager, university student who is there, right? And so Boeing now is in deep trouble because they have multiple of those issues. Because if you have that issue, if you think about it, then there are other types of issues that happen. You think that was the only fault that happened on the whole line? So if there's one person that was the first error that got caught, years down the road, then obviously there are a lot of other faults that happen all along down the line, right? And so there's a culture of saying that we should be able to transition and change and transform as much as we can. So what we want to do as a result is that, there came a philosophy called the Lean Startup, which the Lean Startup is really fundamentally about doing three things. The first thing is really about building. The second is about measuring. And then the third is learning. So what that means is that when you're doing a learning loop, when you're doing a startup, you should be able to build something as quickly as possible. Then after that, you understand what are the outcomes that were supposed to come from it, because you released it in the wild. And then you learn from it and decide to do something different. And then you build the next version of it, right? And so this is the same philosophy of Kaizen, but in a culture of startups. In Kaizen, it was, I need to get a car down this line and I want it to work, right? So the output of that is perfect cars in that sense, less waste, less mistakes. But for the learning loop, for minimum viable product, very much about saying, the output of what we're trying to achieve is the learning of the startup. Some of you picked a company for the first time. Then you get some feedback, and then you learn from it, and then you may change your mind. So the output of startups is not building something, although there's a big part of it. The key value proposition of a startup is that you must be learning faster than everybody else at the frontier of customer requirements and technology. She was asking, if Goliath has so many advantages, how can David's be better? And I always say, it's not that David's are releasing products better, but they are learning faster than the organization can do. So the speed of that is really important. And so the lean startup is really about saying, how do I incorporate and build better ideas? And so as a result, these companies are trying to do minimum viable products. And what that means is that historically, most people think about minimum viable products as saying, okay, let's build the wheels, then we build the chassis, then we build the car. So the minimum viable product is they need to build a whole car. But what we mean by minimum viable product is that what is the minimum requirement to travel? The first step can be building a skateboard. The second one can be building a scooter. Step 3 could be building a bicycle. Step 4 is building a motorbike. And step 5 is building a full car, right? So the minimum viable product is what is the minimum level product that gets you from point A to point B. So if this person says, okay, I just want to learn and get an A for my math exam. Step 1 could be you doing it manually as a human. That would be the fastest to do it because you really can teach a person how to do O-level math. Step 2 could be you can start using some AI tools, papers, worksheets that you believe. Then step 3 is start incorporating AI tools. Step 4 is an AI front end, but the humans at the back. And then step 5 is a full AI agent, right? But at each stage of this product, there is an actual ability to deliver the result of what the customer wants. And so as a result, when we think about startups, we think about it in terms of divergence and convergence. It's very much about diamond shape. It's like some of you would notice that in different conversations, and at a you had the same point, right? The point that you had was figure out which is the best company out of the 40. So all of you diverge, all of you start looking at the different websites and parallel. So all of you are diverging because you're creating, in a group of 5 times 40 startups. So you are creating 200 different opinions in that space. So you're diverging. And then somebody starts saying, we should start filtering. Let's cut off all the startups that only have male founders. Let's divide this in half, right? Or some of you may say, let's only focus on the AI stuff, right? So there'll be ways for you to converge. You're trying to filter that down. And so it's really important that when you think about the companies that you're looking at in any product or whatever it is, there'll be a stage for divergence. You're trying to explore as many ideas, and some of you will be converging, trying to filter it. And it's important that when people are diverging, you don't try to squeeze people to converge. And when people are trying to converge, you have to be comfortable with the convergence. And then you have to kind of do this multiple times. Diverging and converging is important. And we see that at startup time. And problem with a lot of companies when you join a big company or people complaining about bureaucracy at a very large organization like a public service is because every time you are creative, then somebody's like, converge. I want to cut it off. It's a bad idea. You know what I mean? So you have to be thinking about that divergence and convergence spectrum all the time. And so as a result, if you think about it, is that every company, and even for you guys, are thinking about persevering or pivoting. So you may have heard that phrase. So the pivot is to change your mind, okay? And startup founders change their mind all the time. They hear information, they change their mind. They hear this new piece of technology, they change their mind. They hear a new tool, an AI tool, they use it. So people are pivoting all the time. But also you need to discuss and decide when you need to persevere, what things of it do you want to continue doing? So some of you may choose uncommon, and you may say, you know what? Everyone else is wrong. They don't see the value of what we're doing. We're going to persevere on this company selection. So be it. Some of you pivot, and that's good. You say, hey, I'm uncommon. I'm going to pivot to another company that I want to work on. No problem either. But the decision, where you make a decision between perseverance and pivoting is important. And so there are 3 different types in terms of pivoting, and a good way to help understand the customer and market. So there are often companies that have chosen to keep the customer but change the product. So what that means is that they like that customer, they understand the customer, maybe they are that customer, but then they change the product because they realize that the product should be a better version of that. So for example, for Instagram, it used to be called Bourbon, which is a type of Foursquare. So you could check into locations, take photos of it, and then leave reviews. And then what they realized was that people really liked the photo sharing piece of it because everybody was a millennial at that point of time. And so they killed all the other features. They were like, you know what, let's focus entirely on the photo aspect of this thing. We don't care about check-ins and being a mayor and stuff like that. We don't. And today, nobody knows what Foursquare is. Foursquare is dead. It was very popular, but Instagram is still around. So that's one. So you look at Netflix. Netflix was saying, we want people to watch TV. People want to watch Hollywood. They started off DVDs a long time ago. And then at some point, the founder was like, you know what? DVDs are old school. like, we're going to mail the DVDs to them, right? So everybody's like, that's crazy. And then he had to create a whole new processing warehouse to mail DVDs, etc. And after that, they were like, you know what? I'm going to change it again. People still like to watch TV. They want it more convenient. I'm going to change the product. I'm going to make it wireless over the internet, right? And now all of us all watch Netflix shows. So the product keeps changing, but they're going after the same customer and the same roughly problem that they have. And lastly, obviously, we look at Rippling. We look at a company here, but basically this is a HR company, and basically they're targeting HR professionals that want to automate their life. So Zenefits was a company that was focusing on providing and automating the benefits package selection for HR professionals. And today, two of those alumni are really famous. Conrad Parker was effectively fired and let go by the board. He will later on found Rippling, which was also targeting HR officers again. It was his revenge startup. He was backed by Y Combinator and Paul Graham because everybody hated on him in the media. But then YC and Paul Graham believed in him, and it felt like those accusations were unfounded. And therefore, he built a second company, and that company became a billion-dollar company called Rippling. And Zenefits is no more. It's gone. Zenefits was taken over by his COO. And today, if you watch the All In podcast, I'm blanking right now on his name. It is not Chamath. It is not Jason. It is David Sachs, who is very famous today, was a COO. He was a part of the team that fired Conrad Parker. And now that COO of Zenefits, who became the CEO for the interim, is now part of the All In podcast, which is the #1 tech podcast in the world, right? And so he's a big Twitter personality and so forth. So, but again, you can see how these companies are keeping the consumer, but changing the product. And so the next version that we have is you can keep the product, but you can change the customer. So for YouTube, it used to be a video-based dating site. So people upload videos of themselves, and then people would just like it and whatever it was. It was also for dating purposes. And then basically they said, you know what, we like the product, but we shouldn't be targeting people who like to date. We should be targeting people who just want to watch cat videos, right? So they pivoted and they kept the product, but they changed the customer. And then if you look at Play-Doh, Play-Doh used to be a cleaning party to clean the walls, and then more people disappeared, pretty much effective in this industry. So they're like, you know what, let's sell this to kids instead, right? And their parents. So Play-Doh is another thing. And if you look at PayPal, it used to be about sending money over PDAs, so sending money from device to device in terms of encryption. But then they decided, you know what, we just need to change our customers. Instead of servicing this for enterprises, we're doing this for individuals as well. What challenges they have when pivoting? When they're pivoting, everybody hates them. Your old customers hate you for pivoting, the ones who believed in you. Your new customers think that you're a loser for changing your mind. And then, but I think pivoting, everybody, people can be, a lot of founders are egoistic. So they're like, I made a choice, I need to stay on it. So it's very hard to pivot. It's very hard to realize to yourself. It's very hard to explain to investors who invested in you on your previous idea. So pivoting is very, very hard. But I would say that the actual execution of pivoting is actually easier. So like building a new product, if you're a founder, you know how to build product, you know how to hire people. Like the execution of the pivot is actually pretty easy generally. Like for example, if you're Netflix, back in the day, he's fighting against Blockbuster, right? So they were both selling DVDs physically back in the day. And then both of them, and Netflix eventually became sending it by mail, eventually sending it online. Blockbuster kept doing it in stores, and it totally died as a company, right? Called Blockbuster. It's not hard. I mean, if you tell people like hiring engineers, they have a lot of money, they both are profitable, it was actually easy to execute. So I think the primary difficulty of pivoting is changing your mind. And that's difficult because most people think that pivoting means that you're saying that you're wrong, but it's not. Things change all the time. Like, a lot of companies were building therapy companies 3 years ago, 4 years ago, like human to human, fractional, like BetterHelp, etc. Or they're trying to use nonprofits to provide therapy services to youth and people who can't afford to pay. But now GPT has come out, right? And so you see a lot of therapy startups, some of them were very quick. Within 30 days, they were like, we're going to use AI from now on, and we're not going to use volunteers or whatever it is. But of course, the problem is a lot of people saying like, oh, can you use AI therapists? Is that safe or not? Blah, blah, blah. So obviously, they're getting a lot of hate. But then you see for the companies that are slower to react, a lot of them have closed down because it turns out that you can do it effectively for free and immediately, right? So I think pivoting, I'm just trying to say here is like, it's okay to change your mind. And I think that's the hardest part. It doesn't mean that you're wrong, but you have to figure out what's the more right answer. If you want a job that tells you that you're right all the time, startups and technology is probably not. Does it make sense? It's not a place of continuous positive affirmation. It's about trying to search for the better answer and truth to it.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.